Today we have the privilege and honor to visit with Pat Martin from Devil's Lake. He was in the service of our country and was in the Korean War or Korean conflict, as they may call it sometimes. And he was captured by the North Koreans, or the enemy, and held prisoner of war for a while. So today we're going to find out about Pat, where he was born and what happened to him, what school he went to, and so on and so forth. And then obviously he got into the service, so you can just go ahead and tell us your story, Pat.
Well, I was born in Munich, North Dakota in February of 1930, and I graduated from Munich High School in 1948 in May. In June, I got my draft notice. I was the last of the draftees, I guess, in the World War II era. So after talking it over with my dad, he said, well, if you got to go, you got to go. So talking with the recruiting sergeant, he lined me up with a school upon passing the examination, and which I did later, and I went to Fort Knox, Kentucky for my basic training. And while I was in Fort Knox, Kentucky is where I got my first taste of guarding prisoners. Over the Christmas vacation, after our 4th week of basic, they allow us to carry live ammunition. And then, of course, we also guarded the gold like everybody jokes about. And then after basic training, I went to Camp Gordon, Georgia for radio training, and then shipped to San Francisco, boarded the ship for Okinawa.
Now at Camp Gordon, did you have classroom training then in communications?
Yes.
And code or voice?
Morse code.
Code.
I took 35 words a minute Morse code.
You took 35. That's pretty fast.
Yeah. And
did you have was there a certain standard you had to meet?
Yeah, you had to. Well, you went in grades.
Yeah.
7 words a minute was a low-speed operator if you could never get any higher.
Yeah.
Then if you got to 18 words, they called it intermediate. And then anything, you had to get to 35 words and it would be classified. They called it an 0648, I believe, or 0766 was a number for a high-speed radio operator.
Now you would be assigned to a unit that had a communications company or something like that. Yeah. And take that. This here code and so on, was that for receiving and sending messages then between units and higher headquarters and so on?
Right, and then we had to be capable of sending 20 words a minute with the hand key.
Did you have the up and down key or the side key?
We had the up and down.
Up and down.
The side one was the Navy used in ship to shore, and boy, they'd drive you up a tree when you tried to copy them, because they'd get up around 60 words a minute and drive you crazy. Well, then also in school, we were talking about the cryptograph machine.
Yeah.
To cipher and decipher coded messages, how you make them and how you break them down, and it was really interesting how that little machine can do so much. But it's all preset on what they call the SOI, Standing Operating Instructions for the day. And then
these would change every day, these instructions?
Every day, and especially when we got over into combat, we found that out. Every day you got a new SOI. And
you set the machine?
You had to set it. Everybody had to set theirs right, otherwise it wouldn't work.
Yeah. And then would you send out a coded message then to, say, higher headquarters, and they'd send you a coded message back?
Right.
And then you'd go to the machine then?
Had to go through the machine. When your SOI...
Get a plain language then?
Right. When you, like, say you wanted to say, attack hill 81, so you'd put that in 5 group letters.
Yeah.
Groups of 5 letters, and then space, then 5 more letters, and space. But you had to set your machine accordingly to run this through. And you run these groups of 5 letters through, and that's what would come out the other side, the attack hill number. Unbelievable.
In plain language?
Yeah.
In plain language.
Just how that little cryptograph machine would work. But it was amazing. And I enjoyed it. I really did. Then he had, they taught you about your colors, when you're right up on the front line, you have color panels. You've probably seen that in the Air Force. Color panels on the hood of vehicles.
Yeah.
One day they'd be orange, the next day they'd be green, and depending on what the SOI said for you to put on that hood, that's the color you put on it.
That was to differentiate, so
Like
they'd
you,
know
so you could tell who was there.
if
you
you
know,
were friendly or enemy.
Right, right. And of course, over in Korea, at the start of the war, everything was so kind of confused that we didn't get these SOIs every day, and so we went around with orange for several days. You know.
Might have been running around with the enemy. Come on. Well, how did did you go by train to San Francisco?
San Francisco, and then
Troop train?
Well, it was a troop train, boy, and it was the next thing to a box or cattle car.
What did you eat there on the train? Or how did that
They
work?
gave us meal tickets. I think at that time we could get breakfast for $1.25, dinner for $1.50, and evening meal for $1.75.
And you ate in the
dining
car.
Mhm.
Took turns then.
Yeah. And when we got out there, and I got on, going over, I went on General Buckner, was a two-stacker, big ship. And thank God we did, because right out of the Philippines we hit a typhoon. And we were in the typhoon for 3 days. And when the storm was over, we were 500 miles off course. Man, it was rough. And we pulled into Hawaii first before we spent 2 days in Hawaii. And we had a real good trip going over, a day in Guam and 3 days in the Philippines. And then my last stop was Okinawa. That's where I got off.
From the Philippines to Okinawa. On the same ship?
Same ship.
Yep. Now, were you with an infantry unit or division or
Well, I was assigned to the Triple Deuce Automatic Weapons Battalion, and I was communications, and then I got sent to Japan to go to radar school. I was on
from Okinawa?
Yeah, I was on temporary duty to
Japan. We had conquered Japan.
Oh yeah. This was after World War II.
Yeah.
And
did you go to a base then in Japan?
Yeah, I went to the radio school they had in the old naval station. In I can't remember the name of the place, but it was where the Navy, Japanese Navy used to train all their naval officers.
I see. Pretty fancy place.
It wasn't bad. It was, of course, lots smaller.
Yeah. Did they have barracks and things?
Yes.
Yeah. Had classrooms and so on.
Yeah, and that's where we were going to school when the war broke out in Korea. They woke us up at midnight and told us that the North Koreans invaded the South Korea. Clear your rooms. So we stripped our beds, our bunks, piled them up, and turned in all our bedding. And at 6 o'clock that morning, I boarded a plane back for Okinawa. Got off the plane. Company commander from the 222nd, he met me at the plane, and he said, I got some news I don't think you want to hear. And I said, what's that? And he says, you've got to go right to the 29th. It's just across the island.
29th Infantry?
29th Infantry Regiment, yeah.
Across the island of Okinawa?
Yeah, so I took my gear and went over there. And I was assigned to communications again in the 3rd Battalion of the 29th, and headquarters company, 3rd Battalion. So we got our shots and everything we had to have, and headed out. And they sent a Japanese hospital ship to take us over there. Boy, I tell you, yeah, that wasn't a scare. It was so rusty, but and on the way over,
was that a hospital ship, the Japanese?
it was an old Japanese hospital ship converted over to a troop transport.
I see.
We were about halfway over there, and there was an unidentified sub in the area, so we had 2 British cruisers for escort. They started dropping depth charges, and every time they dropped a depth charge, we'd lose another inch of wall off that whole ship. The rust would just fall off of it. I never did go below deck. I stayed up on top just in case. Anyway, we got to Busan.
That's a big port now in Korea.
Busan, yeah, Busan. And
what time was that? What year was that?
1950.
1950.
I was trying to remember. it seems to me it was either June 15th or June 18th when they closed the school down.
That is at communication school you were at in Japan, yeah.
And then, and it was 5 days later, I think, was when we 5 or 6 days later, we were in Busan. And we unloaded, and we got on trucks and started going north. And that's when General Dean was with the 24th Division. He landed, he was the first outfit there. And we were sent, our first mission was to go get General Dean from Daegu. He was trapped up there. Well, we never did get there because we ran into skirmishes, real heavy skirmishes at just south of Daegu, Korea. And then a couple days later, we pulled back to Hadong, and that's where we really got clobbered. And
Your unit did?
yes,
Yeah.
they came out of the woodwork. There was thousands of them.
Now, these were North Koreans.
North Koreans.
And how many were there in your unit, would you say?
There was about 800 of us went over there.
Yeah.
And I think that in that first 3 days, we lost over 400 men.
Killed or?
Yes.
Yeah. Some of them were captured, too,
This-
like yourself.
Yes, and what was really sad about the whole thing is we get 4 or 5 truckloads of replacements, and in the morning they'd assign you men, whoever you were supposed to get, and the next morning they wouldn't be there, and it was
You
really
killed the first
hard.
day of the war,
Yeah.
as far as they were concerned, first day of the war.
First patrol out. you know.
Yeah.
So then,
Now you're with the 29th Infantry Regiment. By the way, I should mention this, but it's kind of a little bit beside the point. I believe that 29th Infantry Regiment, they were at Fort Benning back in the 30s. Now, that's beside the point, but I mean...
well, yes, yeah, they are, because I got this thing right here. They're in Ellerslie, Georgia, right now.
Yeah, that's just not very far
That's where
from...
their headquarters is.
Okay, go ahead. You
And
mentioned that these guys would go out, you'd load them up in the morning, and then
they
they
go out
wouldn't
on
be there the
patrol,
next day.
and the next morning they'd be gone.
Now, what'd they do with those guys that were killed? You know, have any idea who buried them, or
Well,
they brought back, or?
In our case, when we were being pushed back all the time at the start of this war.
Your American unit were being
Yeah,
pushed back
pushed
by the North Koreans now.
Yeah, we were moving back into this perimeter. But at that time we didn't know this. You know,
No.
we were just trying to hold, I guess, get some time so we could get some material and equipment over there, because they were rationing us ammunition, and if you got a hand grenade, you could figure yourself very lucky, and you usually got 2 bandoliers of ammunition. Well, 2 bandoliers don't last long.
Oh. What kind of, did you have a regular issue rifle, I suppose?
Well, I had an M1 for a while, and then I started carrying a carbine.
Oh,
and,
yeah. Carbine was lighter and
Yes.
smaller, and just as good as accurate.
and so then,
But now, you were in a communication. Did you have any duties now when you were?
I was the first day out. The first day in combat, we lost our communications chief. And
Was he
and our
killed
fir-
or lost,
Yeah,
or?
he was killed. And our
Was
first
he a sergeant or officer?
He was a master sergeant. No, sergeant. I'm sorry, sergeant first class.
Oh, yeah.
So at this time, I was a PFC, private first class. So our company commander got killed, and our first sergeant and the supply sergeant. And communications sergeant. So the captain called me in, and he said, we lost our communications chief. He says, "You're it." I says, "Holy cow. I'm a pretty young guy." I'm thinking to myself, I said, "Do you think I can handle it?" And he says, "Damn right." And he says, "Out of here." So I went, and a very, very good friend of mine, whose name was Kenneth A. Oshinsky, he was my repairman, and he was my right arm all the way through.
There were just 3, 4 of you then in this unit, I suppose.
Oh, we had about 7.
Boy,
We had,
in this communications
Yeah,
squadron or whatever they call it.
well, I
section.
think in communications in the infantry, the signalman is the next thing to a corpsman,
Oh,
because they got to string the wire
yeah, sure.
right alongside the corpsman, who's picking up the wounded, and they got to make sure these lines are open. And
Yeah.
now with the communications we have today, just from my looking in,
Yeah.
on the new equipment they've got is unbelievable. There's no more string and wire.
Don't have the string and wire.
Because the old radios we had, you get over the hill, you couldn't hear them.
No.
Well then, what was I going to say?
Well, you were after this. You got
Okay.
to be the chief here of this
Okay, I was
communications section all of a sudden.
communications chief.
Within a short time. I mean, it didn't take
Yeah,
very long.
very short time. Well then, we got into a skirmish at Hadong, which was really, really costly. We lost, oh man, we must have lost 250 men that day.
Americans?
Yes, and I was going to tell you, as long as we're falling back like this, they didn't worry about our dead. They just left them lay.
They just
And
left
that's
them.
one of the reasons the MIA problem is so hard to solve in Korea, because the first thing they ripped off was the dog tags, and they went through their pockets. And
The Korean, North Korean.
yeah, it did to our men. See, and then there lays this body. How are you going to identify it?
Yeah.
And one day in the hot sun, and the maggots are there,
Yeah.
and it's a sad situation. And,
Say, speaking of finding who these people are, you know, the head of the MIA problem in the United States that we have now is an admiral from, I think he's from Carrington or New Rockford. He's the head of, I guess he's got 2,000-3,000 men that are working on this problem. The same problem that you say, where they died and they don't know where they are, who it was, and so on. He's trying to find the remains and get them straightened out. A big job. I heard him talking not long ago. Well, go ahead. You say that they.
well, anyway, speaking of this subject, Andy Shaw, who was a very good friend of mine from Fort Totten, who was right across the mountain range, or the hill range from us, he got captured at the same time, but he was unfortunate. He got sent way up north, and he was there for 3 years.
Now he's still living, isn't
He's still living.
Yeah.
He lives in Fort Totten.
he? Is he an Indian?
Yes.
Yeah.
Very nice. Very
You
nice.
ever
man.
get to see, you ever see him once?
Well, I haven't seen him since
No.
so much since the flood,
No.
but otherwise I used to see him
Yeah.
a couple times a week.
Yeah.
And Andy says he knows where there's bodies of many, many up there in the mountains in
Yeah.
North Korea.
Well, he was up there so long.
Yeah. And then and anyway, then in Hadong, where we really got clobbered.
That is by small arms or artillery and everything.
Oh man, they could put a mortar in your back pocket. You give them a second chance.
I see.
But they pull us into a. They pull us into a. It was like a horseshoe hill, and why they didn't look it over first, but like I gotta. You hate to admit we were all greenhorns.
Yeah.
You know, and the old guys in the army that were World War II vets, they were
Yeah.
saying this isn't right, this isn't right. But
Yeah.
who am I to know? Because I'm just a punk kid, you know.
Yeah.
So we got caught in there, and
By the North Koreans.
yep. And the first shell missed the Air Force Jeep. We had communications between the Air Force Jeep and the fighter pilots, but the second one got her, and boy, he went right on down the list. And we had
Now, were those Jeeps yours?
our Jeeps, and
They were used for communication.
yeah. Well, we were in convoy going north. See?
Oh, I see. Excuse me.
And
Yeah.
they went right on down the line, and our communications truck was probably the 5th or 6th, maybe as far back as the 10th. And they skipped about 7 vehicles, and then they got us. And man, there went all our communications. So,
With a mortar shell?
yeah, with mortar.
Yeah.
So then they took what us communication boys. We just grabbed a rifle and went help the
Fight.
doughboys out. And
As far as communication was
it was
concerned, that
gone.
was gone.
Everything we had was gone.
Yeah. Did some of the guys with you then get killed on that?
Oh yes, it was. There were a lot of them lost that day. A lot, and there was some bad calls made. I hate to be the judge because some of the officers made blunders, bad
Yeah.
blunders, and I got some letters here from different people that when I read these letters, I can just see it like it was yesterday.
Sure.
And but who am I to say I wouldn't have made the same mistake, because your cholesterol gets pretty high when the shells are that close and that hot, you know.
Sure.
Well, anyway, then we got beat pretty bad there, so we moved back probably 6 miles, set up again. And the next day was repeat history. Just
They come out
got her
after you?
again. And trouble was we couldn't get ammunition enough, and they'd ration it to you. And we finally, after about the fourth day, we got back to Chinju, Korea.
Is that on the coast or inland?
No, it's inland.
Yeah.
And I suppose we'd probably be 100 miles from, between 75 and 100 miles from Seoul.
Oh,
And-
east of Seoul then.
We would be northwest, towards
Oh. Okay,
well, looking at the peninsula on
Yeah.
the left-hand side.
yeah. I
The
see.
west.
Okay, yeah.
So we were in Chinju, and during the night, the headquarters moved all personnel that was there, put us up on a hill, kind of a range type, but what it turned out to be was an old cemetery that we were supposed to hold back the oncoming forces while they got out. Well, when they hit, they come at us from all directions and all sides.
On foot?
Yeah.
With
Well,
rifle?
they did have a few tanks, but all we had to fight tanks was an M1 rifle.
Yeah.
We had one bazooka and 3 rounds of ammunition. And I think, if I remember correctly, they got 2 tanks with the 3 rounds, so that's
Yeah.
not too bad. Well, then and that was the day my buddy Oshinsky got killed in the foxhole I was in. He got hit in the spine. And earlier, maybe 15 minutes, I got shot right through the heel with my shoe. And it was hot, man, and burnt. And I took off my shoe. I thought, boy, I lost my foot, but it was just blood red, but it didn't, there's no serious bleeding. So I really thank my lucky star that I was able to walk, because
But it
So-
went through the shoe though, but.
it went through my shoe, but
Yeah.
and just
Right.
give me a good burn on the back of my shoe,
Yeah.
on the back of my heel. So then Andy got hit, and I stayed with him till he passed away. And he got hit in the spine, so I suppose he maybe lived 10 minutes.
Did he know he was going to die then?
Yeah, well, he kept saying, Pat, call an ambulance, or call a medic. So
Yeah.
I'd holler medic, but I knew there wasn't one within 10 miles.
No.
So I stayed with him anyway until he passed away, and I took off down this ravine. We were out of ammunition. Field stripped our rifle. I field stripped my rifle, threw it away, and took off down this ravine. And I hid in there for, I think it was a day and a half. And
Were there others around you now?
there
Americans?
was 2 more later that came down. They must have seen me go in there, and they came in. There were two real young fellas. Well, I was young myself, but they were 2 years younger. They were 17. Their parents had a sign for them to get in.
Americans?
Yeah, America. So while we were there, there was the firing up on top side was very, very just getting less and less and less, and but you could hear the screams and the hollers, and this was the guards, I mean the Koreans going out, and what those our men that couldn't walk, they murdered. Well, they murdered them, killed them right there.
The North
So,
Koreans?
Yeah,
Just shot them
right.
that couldn't move or couldn't.
Once you couldn't walk, you were history.
Yeah.
So then we knew there was a railroad track going out of Chinju. So it was my idea that we try to find this track and head south, and we would come to the Americans sooner or later, because it came out of Busan.
Yeah, you were cut off more or less.
Right, we were
from
cut off.
Americans and well, you were
We
just
were out there by
isolated
ourselves.
by yourself. Yeah.
So then we started over that direction, and that's from when they spotted us and they came over.
The Koreans.
Yeah, they come over and they got us.
And there's nothing you could do then.
No, and they tied us up and blindfolded us, and they were going through all kinds of motions, like pointing a gun to our head, and they were going to shoot us. And
How many now were there that were captured?
there must have been, I don't know, dozen.
Dozen or so, yeah. That they kept you in a group then.
No, there was only 3 of us at that time.
Yeah, oh, I see.
3 Americans, but
Yeah.
there was about a dozen of them that come and got us.
Dozen
and-
North Koreans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they put us in this room. That's where they tied us up, and before they tied our hands, they made us empty our pockets. And that's when my wife was saying, I laid out everything, and my mother had given me a rosary and a watch with a gold crystal. I mean, a green crystal. It was real pretty. It was a Longines Whitnore watch that I got for graduation. Well, that was gone. They took everything except my rosary. And, well, we know more than God, and they gave it back to me. But in fact, they wouldn't even touch it.
They knew what it was.
They knew what it was, but
They-
they wouldn't touch it.
The North Koreans knew what it was.
So I said,
Yeah.
thank you, I'll keep it. So I did. And in my billfold, I never had anything, a few pictures of my girlfriend and maybe my brothers and sisters and stuff, but I stuck it in the crotch of my pants. And by golly, they never found it. They searched me a couple times, but
They never found that billfold.
they never found it. Well,
What about your dog tags?
well, they let me have my dog tags as long as I was mobile, but if
Yeah.
I ever went down where they
Shot
got rid of me, they'd have taken them.
Yeah.
They kept, otherwise they let us keep.
What happened then after this was in a room where they sort of initial interrogation?
Well, anyway, we were all tied up. They tied us up then, and they were talking. Of course, we couldn't understand them,
No.
but they were screaming and hollering and yipping and yapping, and finally, I guess you get so scared you aren't scared.
Yeah,
you know,
sure, yeah, yeah,
You go to a point.
yeah.
Well, anyway, this voice came in. He says, "Do not fear. We will not harm you." And
Spoke
I s-
American.
Yeah. And I said, "Well, who are you?" And he says, "My name is Michael Bark in English." And he says, "I was educated in Singapore with American children." So they took our blindfolds off and untied us, and we talked for a while. And
You visited with this guy?
yeah, he, of course.
Now, he was a prisoner too, or was he?
No, he was the interpreter.
Oh, he was an interpreter.
He was the
He was the
North
first-
Korean interpreter. I
Yeah.
can't remember what his
No.
rank was, but anyway, what he was after is information,
Oh, I see,
And he was
He
trying to
wanted-
get
yeah.
us relaxed, I suppose.
Yeah.
And he wanted to know where we were from,
Yeah.
and how many guys was in our outfit, and where we came from, and all this kind of stuff, And then he wasn't bad at all. Then they brought in.
Was this in a room now, in a house, or?
No, this is just a room, like it would be like an entrance to a house that's not cemented, a floor that's not cemented, a
I
dirt
see.
floor,
Yeah, I see.
and with a stone step. That's about what it
Oh,
was like.
Yeah.
And then he wasn't. Then they took us over to another, like an old school, and that's where we met the tough boys, the higher up, and they were asking the questions.
Now, do they speak English?
No, they'd ask this interpreter
Oh, yeah, I
to
see.
ask us. See.
Yeah.
Well, then they finally brought in another guy who was he could speak fairly good English, and when you see these movies where they always say, "What's your name?" and they talk real, look like I always say like a gopher, But anyway, they'd ask you the same question over and over, and hour after hour, and just. If one day I just got so damn mad I spit in this guy's face, and I shouldn't have done it, because, man, he slapped me with a rifle. I slept for a while. And when I woke up, I thought, boy, this one kid that was with me, he says, "Martin, when the lion's got his arm, your arm in his mouth, clear up to his shoulder, you better damn well pet him with the other hand." And there's a lot of truth to that. Anyway, I learned me to keep my mouth shut.
Now, how did the other guys fare then? About the same as you did?
Yeah, about the same, but what was really sad is we weren't getting anything to eat. We did get a cucumber apiece,
I see.
and a big long cucumber. I ate some of mine, and the only thing is we got diarrhea so bad, and I don't know if it was from the water or from the
Yeah.
cucumber or whatever, but it was tough anyway. And then we'd get one rice ball a day if it was available.
Now, how was the rice ball prepared? Was it just raw? I mean,
It was
cooked rice?
black rice.
Black
Boil-
rice.
Kind of like paste.
Paste.
It was semi-cooked, I suppose.
Yeah.
But it
and
was
rolled up in a ball.
just like glue.
Yeah.
It
How big a
rolled
ball was it?
About the size of a baseball.
Baseball. Each one got one?
Yeah, one a day.
Any other thing? And what about water? You get water?
Well, water was, they give, if the water was available, we'd get it.
Yeah.
But where we got our water is at night when they were marching us from different place to place. Every night they moved us someplace. And then whoever was in the lead column, we had one canteen between, there was 12 or 13 of us. And the guy up front would put it in the creek that comes down along the rice paddies, and the guy on the end would pick it up. And we'd hand it back forward, and we'd get our water that way, and hoping that
You drink from the same canteen as
yeah, just pass it on up, and everybody try and get a little water that way.
Now, did they, that rice ball in the water, that's all you had then, for basically?
And then, one day, we pulled into a village early. We had marched all night, come through the mountains, and they never did take us down a decent road. It was always in the trails or someplace. And we got into this village. It was on the east or on the west coast, and the Mighty Mo was sitting out there. Of course, we didn't know it then, but
could you see it?
No, we couldn't see
No.
it. It was just breaking day. And
That's the Mighty Missouri. That's a Missouri battleship now.
yeah, USS, the Mighty Mo.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was just breaking daylight in this little plane, and we had marched all night, and it was wet, rained all night, and we were wet, soaking wet. And that's the first time they ever gave us anything other than the clothes we had on to put around us, a blanket, and it was chilly.
They gave you a blanket?
Yeah, just to put around us.
Yeah.
So we were sitting there in this liaison plane, and Andy, he says, I wonder what the hell that plane's doing up there. He says, it's unusual. Well, pretty soon the first round come in. It was a high explosive, and boy, thank God it was on the other end of the village. The village was narrow and long, along the coast. So the minute these shells started hitting, they gathered all their troops up, and they took us with them, and they went up into the mountains. And after we got up in the mountains a ways, we sat up there and watched the whole thing.
He was a spotter then, that little.
This airplane was a spotter.
For the North Koreans.
Later on, well, he was, no, this was our own ship, the Mighty Mo.
Yeah, that was,
shelling this village, but
I see.
they didn't know we were in there.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And anyway, my neighbor, later on, after I come home, was on that ship. And I asked him, I said, how come the only thing they left in that village was a tower, a smokestack?
Yeah.
And he says, that was our guide point. So many clicks up, so many clicks down, so many left, so many right. But they flattened her. I mean, there was nothing. It looked like a bunch of dump trucks were in there.
Well, those battleships, they really got a lot of
1 ton of steel. And then they put in 2 high explosives and 1 light frosted.
I've seen cities that they destroyed. You couldn't tell whether it was, what it was. It was just bricks.
And my friend Andy, that's where he got hit. One of them big pieces of shrapnel went right through his legs and gave him a bad cut right in the fatty part of the leg.
Is he still living?
No, he died. He passed away. He
from the battle now or after?
No, he beat me home, and the deal was, if he got home before I did, I was supposed to leave Letterman General Hospital and go by way of Kansas City up to Sioux City, Iowa.
Yeah.
I couldn't go that way. I couldn't make connections, so I had to go by way of Spokane.
Oh yeah.
And when I got home, there was a telegram from his sister that they found him dead in his bunk at Fort Sheridan, Illinois.
They found him? Did he kill himself?
No, he had liver infection.
Liver infection. Gee.
And it was really sad, is Andy had 17 and a half years in. He only had 2.5 to go to retire. He was with Patton in World War II.
Yeah.
And like I always said, he always called me the little shit because I was just a kid. And he's an old timer,
Yeah.
But in the hours that Andy and I spent together, when he went in the Army in 1933, and he was horse cavalry, and it's really interesting just listening to him, what they had, how they took care of them horses.
Yeah.
The horses ate before they did. The horses got curried before they took a shower, and all that stuff. And anyway,
Where was he located? Where was the cavalry at that time? Kansas or Missouri or?
Seems to me it was Kansas.
Yeah, I suppose.
But anyway, later on, when Andy and I got back, we went up to. They flew us to General Walker's headquarters in Tejon.
Now you've been liberated now. Haven't you?
No, not yet.
No.
But the reason I'm telling you this is how Andy knew everybody. You know, after his years in service, when they flew us from where we came into the 5th Regimental Combat Team, they flew us to Taegu, where the 8th Army headquarters was, and they took us up to General Walker's office, and Walker says, "Andy, you old SOB, what the hell are you doing here?" And we looked pretty tough, you know, beards and dirtier than hell.
But he knew him.
But he knew him. And then the colonel that picked us up knew him. "Andy, what the hell? What are you doing out here?" And here they were all in the horse cavalry way back.
I see.
And General Walker was the captain.
He was.
And this colonel was his lieutenant. And it was just like old home week for them.
Sure. Talk about those horses.
Well, anyway, we got treated well, really well.
Yeah.
And then we go back to where.
What happened? You were interrogated this place now, and then how did they disperse then? Or you left there, didn't you? And then you marched.
They just kept moving us every night, and we didn't know.
Was there any purpose for that, or was it just?
I think.
Maybe they didn't know themselves.
Well, we'd watch them early in the morning, when we get done wherever we were moved from. We didn't know where we were going either. Just sometimes we didn't know we were going north or south, or we thought we were moving north. But our artillery was always going over our head like some days, so we'd be close to our own lines. But anyway, what was I going to tell you?
Well, you were moving here from place to place, or marching at night. How far did you go at these here places? Were 5 miles or 10?
There was nights we went 30 miles.
What, 30 miles?
Some nights.
You had a pretty good road then.
Oh, it was, yeah, sometimes, the only time we'd ever make that kind of miles is on a very hard surface road. And it was, one night we were sitting there along the edge of the road, and the Koreans marched 8 abreast, and they walk really, really fast, kind of a shot.
Koreans?
Yeah, the North Koreans.
Yeah.
And
they walked past you?
They were going by us,
Yeah.
and apparently Andy was counting them in the rows, and he figured there was 10,000 right in that area that night that went by us.
10,000.
We don't know for sure where they were going.
Yeah.
But anyway, what I was going to tell you, in the morning, after we get done marching, we'd be sitting around probably having a whatever they give us, maybe water if it was available, or a lot of times we'd like to get just a cup of hot water with a little of that tea of theirs would even break the taste. We'd watch them. They give themselves a shot of something. I don't know what it was.
The Koreans?
Yeah, and then they'd go off to battle.
They would.
So we weren't too far from. We figured we weren't too far from the lines. Well then.
What do you suppose that was that they were giving you? They were giving themselves a shot up in the arm?
I'm sure it was some kind of a upper.
Some kind of a dope.
A drug or something, because they just got wild.
Now was that for the officers, enlisted men, or all of them?
All of them.
All of them.
They all took it.
They all took the shot.
The way they went.
Took off.
Half of them had guns, half of them didn't have guns. Well, then most of the time during the day we just kind of sit around wherever they put us in these little old villages or some kind of a fence or whatever they could find to put us. And that's when this interpreter came one day, and he gave us some propaganda leaflets. And
he's written in English.
And then he said, "I want you to look these over." He told Anderson and I. And Joe Mistrita, who was the only other survivor out of that particular group, beside Andy and I, he had a broken eardrum. And in fact, how lucky I really was. I was the only one that wasn't wounded
I see.
of the whole group. And,
Yeah.
And these two young fellas both passed away because they wouldn't eat. They just absolutely refused anything.
American soldiers.
Yeah,
They
they-
refused
all
to
they-
eat the Korean food?
No, they wouldn't. And all they would do all night long is they'd cry, "Mommy, I want a malt and a hamburger." And, it'd drive you nuts.
They were crying when you were trying to sleep.
And, yeah, and they were, well, hysterical.
Yeah.
You know, and what can you do?
That's right. Nothing you could do.
No, and
Did they die? How long?
oh, I suppose one lasted a week, the other one lasted 9 days maybe.
Then they just, everything got quiet. They
Yeah,
just-
and but they just got so weak. It's really pathetic. One guy couldn't walk anymore, and he fell down, and one of us couldn't get to him quick enough to help him, and they killed
Shot
him.
'em.
That's it. And once you lost your power.
Yeah. Did you ever give you tobacco?
No. Oh yeah, they give us a cigarette
Yeah.
once in a while.
In a leaf form or just a rolled
Oh,
up
a real loose
cigarette?
loose. It looked like it was
You ever give
rolled
you,
up by a
ever
truck.
give you any tobacco to chew?
No.
Ever get any alcohol or anything like that, beer or anything?
No.
Yeah. What about fruit or vegetables or
No,
anything to eat?
nothing. We were put into a village one time. Andy and I were alone, and they separated us, and we were in this little room, and in this room we could look out and we'd watch a woman and her daughter make flour every morning, and the
Flour out of wheat or
or
grain
rice
or corn?
or rice.
Or rice, yeah.
They take it was like a stick on a Y, and it was up on about a 3-foot ramp, or let's say a 1.5-foot ramp, and then this girl would step on that thing and it would come up, and the woman would put the rice in the pan underneath that
Yeah.
big block that hung on that post, and then she'd step off of it onto this platform, and that thing would slam down into that pan, and that's how they smashed it.
Smashed it.
And
That is
she'd
that's
keep
raw
dropping.
rice.
Yeah, she'd
Dry.
keep that dropping, and then they'd make like doughy biscuits or something
Yeah.
out of it, you know. And these people slipped us an apple a couple times.
So it's that lady and her daughter.
Yeah, and anyway, we were told by the interpreter that could be bad for them. And, you know, and
Oh, sure.
we sure as hell didn't want to get anybody in trouble that was trying to help us, you know. But there was some good.
Sure. How about the guards now that were when you were taking these marches? Did you have good guards, bad guards?
Well,
terrible
we
guards?
had both.
We had both.
Well, it really was scary. Some of them guards were only 9 years old.
Just really.
9 years
9
old,
years old.
10 years old. And, boy, you know, you don't know what they're going to do.
No, well yeah.
I'd rather have an older, you know,
Sure.
you felt better when you had an older person.
Did you ever have any real old people, say 60, 70, 80 years
no.
old? No. As used as guard, no.
No.
Where I was in Germany, in places, a lot of places, you know, they used old guards or Japanese.
Oh,
too,
yeah?
Yeah.
No, we
I
never
guess,
had any
no.
old timers. In fact, I would say I didn't see hardly anyone that was any age in their army.
No.
All quite young. I don't know. I
How were the
suppose
uniforms and equipment that these men carried, these
they all,
Koreans?
they all had burp guns. They're all the same.
All the
burp
same.
guns. Those that had guns. Those
Yeah.
that didn't have any was just
What about their
all-
clothing?
all kind of an olive drab green,
Quilted?
quilted, and
Did they look fairly healthy,
oh.
guards that you saw, or were they?
Well, they were
run
fair.
down?
They're all real thin anyway. But
Yeah. What about the eating? What did the guards eat now?
when they went out on patrol, they got 2 rice balls about that big, tied it on their belt, and a little garlic, and that was it. And that's what makes them so mobile.
Yeah.
For a GI to go out and on patrol like that, you got a 6x6 following you up with groceries and everything else, you know. But not them. They just that's it.
They had that garlic was mixed in with the rice balls, kind
They
of.
put it right on top, and
Right on
of
top.
course they eat it and stink, man, oh man.
They had 2 of those. Then they had a canteen or something, or water in, I suppose.
Oh yes, yeah, they all carry the canteen.
Yeah. What about, did they beat many of the guys on these marches, or out?
Oh, yes, you bet. Yeah, if you got out of line any way, shape, or form, boy, they'd clobber you.
Yeah.
And even their own people.
Yeah, I see.
We seen one night a young kid, I'm sure he wasn't 12, 13 years old, and he was carrying the tripod of a machine gun. You know, they're quite heavy.
Yeah.
And he dropped it. And this sergeant, apparently, he was a sergeant, I really wasn't sure of his rank, but he beat that kid just senseless. And then finally another guy came and took the thing and went on and gave him the lighter, whatever, the lighter piece of that
Yeah.
gun. But it scares you, you know. You
You don't know, you
have
might-
kind of a chance if I got it if I
That's
fall
right,
down.
you might
you know.
run into you, too. Yeah.
That's right, yes, but...
Now, did they think they were winning the war or losing it, or what did they
oh,
think?
yes, they said that they'd have us all pushed in the water in a week.
Oh.
But that last week, they just couldn't get through that perimeter, thank God.
Now, were you ever in a permanent any camp?
No,
No,
no, I
you were
never-
always moving.
Always moving, always moving. And then Andy and I got separated from him, and I got malaria. Man, I was sick. Oh, I had such a fever, and my lips were cracked, and I just felt awful. And that was well, Andy was a tanker. I should have told you about this. And the Koreans suspected he was a tanker, but they couldn't prove it, and nobody would tell him any different.
Oh.
And Andy and Joe Mastrita were with the tank outfit that brought the first 3 tanks to Korea, and we got them for support.
Oh, I see.
And then one of our own bombers knocked our bridge out, and they couldn't get the tanks across, so we lost them.
I see.
And they were right there at Chinju at the same
Yeah.
time. That's how I got to meet Andy after we all kind of gathered in the meeting place there. And Andy was looking in these tanks. They kept taking them out there trying to... What Anderson did, each tank has got a solenoid, they call it the brain of the tank, and I suppose it's like a rifle. You throw the components away, the main
Sure.
components. So he broke them, and of course the tank's worthless. Without that solenoid, nothing works.
Yeah, I see.
And they were out there trying to get him to figure out what was wrong with them tanks, and of course he just played dumb. And while he was there, he found a G-string they had in one of them tanks with, you know, the piano wire with the handles on it.
Yeah.
He stuck it in his pocket, and I never knew he had it until this day, the day Andy says, we're going to leave tonight. I said, what the hell are you talking about? I said, if you're going to go anywhere, Andy, you go without me, 'cause I'll just hold you up. I said, I can't go. You're going with me, you little shit. So later on that night, he came, come on, let's go. And I said,
Where were you
car?"
now? Sort of in a...
We were up in the mountains.
Yeah.
They moved us up in the mountain. And our artillery was going over our head all day. And so, figuring from the time you see the flash till you hear the explosion, you count 1,001, 1,002, 1,003, tell you approximately how many hundreds of yards you're from that weapon.
Sure.
And Andy figured 8 miles. So he says, we're going to go for it. And I said, Andy, you go without me. I said,
What about
"I'll
now
go."
that you had guards around you, did you?
One. Just one.
Just one.
And he took care of him, and he come and got me. He says, man, I was just wiggly. I was so weak. And he pulled on me a little bit and got me started down the mountain, and man, it wasn't long. I started to sweat, and I kind of broke the fever, and I was weak, but at least that fever was gone. And
You killed that guard then.
and
Then as you marched, how did that go then when you started marching?
then we rolled and tumbled and fell down the mountain and down these hills.
Was it dark or daylight?
Darker than a bugger. It was just, well, it was probably half hour after the sun went down.
Yeah, I see.
And we had to, well, we knew, once we got to the bottom of the mountain, we knew we were in the Chinju Valley, because the rice paddies there was about 2.5 miles across, and it was just like a checkerboard.
Yeah.
And we got about, I suppose a third of the way across when they spotted us. And it was...
The North Koreans.
Yeah. They opened up on us, but really, we were out far enough where them burp guns weren't really effective, but we went from rice paddy to rice paddy. and we wait a while, and then we get up and run like hell again. And once we got across the paddies, we found out there must have been a hell of a battle there the day before, because there was all kinds of GI trucks and tanks and men laying all over.
Out in the valley there, on the far side.
In the Chinju Valley, on the other side.
Yeah.
And then Andy's leg, where he had got hit with that shrapnel, was bleeding pretty good, so we took some of the first aid stuff off of dead GIs and patched his leg up a little bit. Then we spent the night there in the back of an old 6x6, and hoping that nobody would find us. So anyway, early the next morning, the liaison plane woke us up, and he come from the direction we were going. So just for curiosity, we grabbed one of these panels off of a 6x6 that was knocked out, and we carried it between us. And the guy come right over us, and he flapped his wings and kept on going. And so we thought, well, he must be doing the right thing. So we stayed on the road, and thank God we did, because everything else on both sides of the road was mined to the hilt.
Oh, it was?
Yeah, and that's the first thing he asked us when we got back. How'd you come? We said, right down the road. He says, thank God, everything else was mined to the hilt. He says, you never made it.
Now, when you got to the end of this road, what did you run into?
We run into a barbed wire entanglement, and it was, probably 6 feet high. And they do this for infiltrators or slow anybody down that's coming. And they usually hang mines on these wires, so if you go pulling on them, it'll blow up. See?
Oh, gosh.
So Andy's leg was giving him trouble. I said, Andy, I'll go look it over, see if there's any mines on it. And I got over to it and couldn't see anything. And I looked up, and here's a goddamn rifle that looked that big. It was a BAR, pointed right at me. I said, oh my God, Andy, we're caught again. And here come the helmet up behind the rock. And I said, don't shoot, we're Americans. And he says, what in the hell are you doing out there? Here was a guy, thank God he wasn't trigger happy. So we got Andy through the wire, and that's when they took us by jeep back to the airplane, and they flew us to Daegu in General. And of course we found out later on, and General Walker had his maps, and he wanted to know what we'd seen along the road. Well, there was no heavy equipment.
No.
It was just manpower. That's all they had. Because they get anything out there that moved, and we had Air Force superiority. Boy, I mean, we had it. And they'd blow her off the map. And when they made their big invasion, was right at that area we came out of. They went all the way almost to Sewell the first day.
The Americans.
After they made the big, see, and that's when he old Bulldog Walker, as they call him. He's quite a guy. He took Andy and I in there, and he swore us to secrecy. He says, what I'm telling you, he said, it's top secret. He says, and he wouldn't even let news reporters close to us. No. He said, I'm telling you it's top secret. He says, we're going to make an invasion. And he said, that's why I got to know what you've seen. And he's told us the day and the time and everything. And he says, and don't let it get out, he said. But the way he pointed the finger at you, you didn't want to ever try. But he was quite a guy, he really was. And I felt kind of bad when he got killed, but he had a Bismarck driver from Bismarck, North Dakota, was his Jeep driver.
The general, yeah.
And he was driving that Jeep when he got killed.
What, did he spot him or something? Or
No, he got hit a 6x6.
You hit a 6x6? 6x6
was crossing the road, and they were going so damn fast. And just drove like a lunatic.
Yeah.
And, so then Andy and I, we spent a few days with him and went over all this stuff and over it. And then...
Now you got good food now. You were...
Oh boy, they woke us up at midnight every night to get some of our... I had lost 30 pounds.
Oh yeah.
And Andy had... No, I lost more. I guess I lost 40 pounds. And Andy had lost quite a bit too. And they give us spaghetti and meatballs every night.
I see.
At midnight.
I see.
And they had an Italian cook that could really make it. Boy, it was delicious.
How did his leg turn out then?
He,
Got some help, I suppose.
yeah, they took him in and got it all cleaned up. It was full of maggots, but I never knew until that time. The doctor says that when you have an infected wound, a lot of times they will insert maggots to take the poison out.
Oh, they will.
But then after the poison's gone, you got to get the maggots out because they'll start their own poison.
Yeah, I see. I didn't know.
And I didn't either, and it was kind of interesting.
Yeah. That's an American doctor now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm. And of course, then we never had. It was just all outposts. That's why I kind of get a kick out of that MASH.
Oh, yeah.
'Cause that's kind of the way it was. They just run you in, and if you were able to walk, get out of here, man. We haven't got time to wait to help you out, you know. And
Yeah.
that's the way it
Well,
was.
what happened then? Where'd you go then?
Well, then I went with my outfit all the way up to Pyongyang, North Korea,
Yeah, yeah.
and then that's when I got the order.
You didn't get any. You didn't get into any heavy fighting
Well,
individually.
nothing. Because then we were on the go. And
Yeah.
They were running. There was a lot of mop up, you know,
Yeah.
nothing real serious.
You didn't lose too many men then,
No, not after that.
and you had tanks,
Yeah,
Following
we had equipment then.
airplanes.
You wouldn't believe the equipment they had over there and how they got it there that fast. But then we had superiority until the Chinese come in. And then when we left Pyongyang, North Korea,
Well, now that's way up north.
yeah, it's the capital of
say-
North Korea.
Yeah. Then
When we left, coming back, when the Chinese entered,
what did you ever see the Chinese?
oh yeah, we seen them, but
Would they come in?
they were coming in groves, and that's when my orders came for me to leave. Because they said if I got captured again, I'd be shot as a spy.
So they said they picked you out individually to go back then.
Well, our 8th Army headquarters sent the notice up. In fact, the lieutenant came up and he says, "Martin, I got news for you." I said, "Now what?" He says, "You're to get out of here." And I said, "I'm gone." But anyway, when we left Pyongyang, North Korea, it had a big rail yard, huge rail yard, and the Chinese were just putting the pressure on, and everybody was pulling back. They burnt that whole rail yard full of equipment. Couldn't get it out. There was only one.
Chinese burnt, or the
No,
Koreans.
we burnt our own
Oh,
equipment.
we burnt our own stuff.
We burnt our own stuff to keep them from getting it.
I see.
And
Wow.
they still had a lot of, well, by this time, I suppose they were able to put some of this together, but they
Oh,
had
sure.
a lot of our equipment that they
Yeah.
had captured, you know.
Yeah. Well, then when you left there, where did you go then?
Then I went to the 55th Signal Repair Company, and
Where were they located at?
they were located in Busan.
That's a big city.
Yeah. And
Port.
then, and then I was there a short time, and they asked me I could have my choice of assignment anywhere in the Far East. So I couldn't come home, but I could go anywhere I wanted, and I didn't want to go back to Okinawa. So I took Japan. They said I could work. I could go to General Ridgway's private transmitter station. That's when MacArthur got fired, remember? And
Yeah.
General Ridgway took over. So I went to his private transmitter station.
Where was that located?
In Japan.
Yeah.
Kawasaki.
I see.
Halfway between Yokohama and half.
They
and
fly you
Tokyo.
over there and go by.
Yeah, I flew over there and
Now
boy,
where-
what a ride that was. I was on a C-46, and I had never rode in anything so rough in all my life. I never rode a bucking bronco that rode like that son of a gun. Man,
Well, they had
it
big
was-
wings.
and it flopped like it was
Yeah.
flying, you know. And it bounced and jumped.
Well, how many? Were you alone then, or was there another
I was
group
alone.
with you?
No, I was all alone.
And they sent you over there.
Yeah.
And you went. What happened then when you got to that headquarters? You start working, or Ridgway's
Yeah,
headquarters?
I was took over as acting. Well, I guess I was the first sergeant,
Oh yeah.
and
How many men did you have then? In this?
19 men
19
and one officer.
And this was a communication center.
Just yeah, and the interesting thing there was we were the transmitting station. We were between Kawasaki and Tokyo. The receiver station was on the other side of Yokohama. They were probably 40 miles apart, and they did this for like you're familiar with bombing.
Yeah.
They both wouldn't get hit at the same time. Luckily,
Yeah.
hoping. Well, anyway, and in that antenna field, we probably had 40 antennas that were pointed in every direction that the general would ever want to talk. And your order would come over a teletype. It would say, put antenna 7 on, and that would be pointed, might be Helsinki. We didn't know. But pointed at whatever direction they wanted to talk, that's the number of the antenna they would choose, and we'd have to put it up. But we couldn't put that antenna on the air until we had verification on the teletype.
I see. Double check.
Double check it, yeah.
And then you'd get messages then that you'd send out and receive.
Yeah. Oh, no, we were just the receiving end.
Oh, you just received it.
The transmitting end. And all the outgoing messages went through us.
Yeah.
All the receiving messages came in the receiving station.
Yeah.
And
And they pertain to all kinds of war movements and clans and people and units and so on and so forth. Yeah. How long were you there?
I was there, I suppose, 6, 7 months.
That is pretty good duty.
I was really good. I was, man.
And you had nice.
And then they sent me back to the States.
How'd you get back to the States?
I came back by ship. I came back on a attack transport that was
Attack transport. Okay.
That's one they used to drop troops at Incheon when they made the invasion. It was one of them ships that was going back. The captain of the ship, or however they call the commander of the ship, was getting a promotion. So we come back on that ship, and we set a record. A ship that type had been 7 days, and he made her in 5.5.
I see.
And it was wide open all the way, and when that when that prop come out of the water, you think the ship was going to fall apart. But he let her go.
Where'd you land at?
In Frisco. Come back to Frisco.
Now, did you stay there long? You get a physical, or?
Yeah, I got a physical at Letterman General.
Letterman General.
And they told me that they wanted me to stay and get my teeth fixed.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah.
And
That's a big hospital right on the bay there.
Yeah. And I said, no. I said, I wanted to go home. I said, well, we'll give you a slip. And so they did. And of course, after I got discharged, I went to Dr. Schmies in Langdon to get my teeth fixed. I sent the bill to the VA, and he wouldn't pay it. So I turned it over, and I said, kiss mine, and I sent it back to him. So anyway, one day I was in the Veterans Hospital here, and it was really a coincidence. The guy was looking, he started to laugh, and he says, you were kind of mad at somebody one day, weren't you? And I said, why is that? He said, you were supposed to get your teeth fixed? And I said, yeah. He says, I got your answer in the file. I said, what do you mean? He showed me. I said, oh, no. Here, they had that file. I stuck it in my file.
I see. Did you get your teeth fixed
No,
then?
No, I never
Where
did.
was that, at VA at Fargo?
Fargo, yeah. But I got my teeth fixed, but not through them.
No. How's the VA treated you since you got out, since you left the service?
I can't complain. It's been very good.
What about the federal government and the state government? How have they treated you?
Well, I got a VA. I mean, I got my POW plates, and I got my
What number do you have?
163,
163.
and Johnson's 55.
Oh, yeah.
And
Urban, yeah.
And a good friend of mine just passed away up at Belcourt. He had 22. He was in Germany.
Oh, yeah.
And no, it's they've been real.
What do you
good.
think about these young men today and growing up and so on? And
I'll tell you what. I hope they open their eyes and realize how great this country is. Because if they ever had to live under another dictatorship or something like we did, they'd damn soon find out how nice it is over here, and they'd act accordingly.
What do you think about these young people? In case of war, do you think they would become straightened out, or do you think they're too heavy or too lazy, or how?
Watching their actions right now, you'd think they'd be too damn lazy to do anything about it. But I think if push come to shove, I think they'd be right there. I
and
really
of course,
do believe.
nowadays, of course, Army everything is so much more sophisticated, and all these guys going in and got education so much and so on, and it's a different world.
That's right.
Yeah.
But, I can see the education is unbelievable.
That's right, yeah.
It's just, it's
Yeah.
unbelievable.
Do they have National Guard up at Langdon or Devil's Lake?
They have the headquarters there. Devil's Lake is the headquarters for North Dakota.
Oh, that's right, yeah. You got a big camp
Yeah,
there.
you
camp,
bet.
yeah.
Big. And
You
Highway
have
20
you have a permanent station there in
camp.
Camp? Yeah.
Oh, you
Camp
bet.
Grafton?
And they also have Camp Grafton South now.
Oh,
And that's down by Warwick. It's the old Archie Campbell Ranch they've got a big chunk of.
oh, I see, yeah.
And they're doing a lot of their field exercises down there.
Yeah. Now, do they have, well, of course, they got artillery and infantry
Mm-hmm.
and everything, yeah. Communications and, well, they got everything now.
Oh, man, they got, we had a contract for the food service out there for a couple years, and they do a good job. They do a good
I mean,
job.
you brought the food out there and they prepared.
We used their equipment, their mess hall. And
Oh,
we-
yeah, I see.
And we prepared the food.
You had the people out there to do it.
Yeah.
You hired the people yourself, and
Mm-hmm. And
How'd that work out?
Very good.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. You got to hand it to the guards. They've got the equipment. They know how to handle it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, they're a good organization, yeah.
you bet.
And of course, they got the reserve too. They got like the Air Force Reserve in Fargo. They fly airplanes and so on. I don't know if they got more reserves in North Dakota or not that are active reserve.
Hey,
I know that, of course, the National Guard's got a lot of. They have a lot of organizations in North Dakota. I mean, that are ready to go to work. They did a lot of work down here in the flood. When the flood came.
Oh,
back
yes,
works,
yeah.
they were the ones that could really handle it because they were familiar. They were outsiders, and they could.
one of the mechanics in Devil's Lake works out there, camp, was telling me they learned a lot. They learned a lot from that flood, like the building on fire and no pump to pump water. He said, boy, that's something they're going to have from now on. They're going to have one mounted.
Sure,
So,
yeah.
but it was, who would think it?
No, that's right.
It's just like a car dealer in Devil's Lake had a sign, we're in water up to our butt, and we still need water, we still need a rain.
How's your health been since
Very
you got
good.
out?
I've had ulcers, and
Got it pretty well controlled?
yes, I had ulcer surgery, and I had open heart surgery.
How'd that open heart surgery go? Pretty
Very good.
Where'd you have that?
St. Luke's,
Oh, yeah.
1977.
Been feeling good since then?
Yes.
Yeah. What about your kids now? How many kids do you have?
I have-
How big a family?
I have nine
9 kids.
children, 5 boys and 4 girls.
Five boys and 4 girls.
The oldest daughter is a home economist out in Jacksonville, Wyoming.
Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Oh, yeah.
And the second girl is captain on the police force, Devil's Lake. And the third girl is secretary at Thief River Falls Arctic Cat.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And the youngest girl is with me in the restaurant.
Oh, yeah.
And I should say I'm with her.
Yeah. I suppose you're. At this time, you're trying to move out.
Yeah, and then, anyway, then I have
How about your boys?
the oldest. Well, let's see. There's four boys right in the Devil's Lake area now. There were 2 of them are out in Nebraska and Kansas, and they came home to work on this flood project. And
At Devil's Lake.
yeah, I mean they're all in the trucking industry.
Oh, yeah.
business. And the youngest boy, he drives Pugsley sandwich truck.
Oh, yeah, sure. That's a pretty big operation there
You
at
bet.
Devil's Lake.
It's gotten to be a good operation.
Yeah. They're making money and so on.
He's got himself a real nice, Pugsley bought a real nice new Kenworth truck.
All for him.
He's pretty proud of it. It's
Sure.
all white, pure white.
Yeah.
Real nice.
How are the service clubs doing there in Devil's Lake?
Well, the VFW is good. American Legion.
They're located downtown, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
They have been in the same location for many, many years.
Yeah,
But the American Legion, of course, went under quite a few years ago.
yeah.
And they have a charter there yet, but it's not active.
No, the members that were on there, they've either joined the VFW or DAV. How's the
not-
DAV? That DAV in Devil's Lake?
Yeah, they're not too active either. And
Just the VFW is the one, yeah.
yeah.
What about the Elks or Eagles?
Well, the Elks were going to lose, I guess. The
On the way
telephone
out.
company's going to buy the building, and the Eagles Club right now is in trouble.
Yeah. Well, that's the way all these towns are. Hard to get these young guys. There's too many other activities, TV and all
Yeah.
kinds of stuff.
And they don't, like
Oh,
you say, you're right. The young guys have got a different idea.
That's right, yeah. So, well, is there anything you want to tell the world now,
Enjoy it.
Pat? You feel
Enjoy our freedom.
if you're going to live your life over again, would you maybe do the same thing?
I think so.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
still got your same wife all
yes.
these years? What do you?
Yeah.
How many years been married? 40
We got married in January of 1952.
52 years.
Mhm.
Well, I've been married 55 years here a couple
Oh,
days ago.
congratulations, by
Yeah.
golly.
So I'm still
55.
55, yeah.
Wow.
I'm 79. I don't know.
You don't
To
look
me,
it.
that's pretty old. Well, I'm
You don't look it. We got, this morning, one of our customers, well, one of our lady customers called me at 6:30 and said, I got to tell you some bad news. Paul Detling passed away, and he lost his wife just 10 days ago.
My goodness.
He just gave up.
Well, I know several cases, sir. I had a grandfather and grandmother did that. One died and the other one died a few days later. He couldn't. And I guess that's a good way to go.
My folks were 4 months apart.
Yeah. My grandparents, I think they were about 6 months apart. I mean, they were in Norway, incidentally, but that's
Oh.
beside the point. I'm a Norwegian, so a lot of
Nothing wrong with
Norwegians
that.
around for what?
Nothing wrong with that.
No, nothing wrong with that.
I'm half Irish, so
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Well, it was nice visiting with you, Pat, and I hope that you have a nice trip back.
Good.
Devil's
Thank you
Lake.
very much, Elmer, for the
And
opportunity.
we'll see that you get some tapes here, and we'll get a tape so that each of your children will get a nice tape for Christmas, we'll say. And you'll get a tape now when you come back, take with you. So,
Okay.
and I'll let you know how the others are doing, and when we can maybe put all this together into a more of a documentary film where you're going to get to see and understand a little bit of what these other people went through too. They were prisoners in Philippines or Japan or North Africa or Germany and so on. They all had similar experiences, and all of them were, in a sense, lucky, that they're here because
Yeah, you bet.
most of the guys that I know of that they were with, most of the guys didn't make it.
Yeah, that's right. And that's why I hope the people that are here remember that.
That's right. See, you forget.
They're our heroes.
That's right. Yeah, they were. That's for sure. That's what when I ever write, I mention that. The guys that lived through it are lucky, but the guys that died are the heroes.
You bet.
They're the
You
ones
bet.
that had it tough. Yeah. Well, thanks a lot, Pat. We'll have you a nice trip
Okay.
back.
Thank you very much,
Yeah.
Elmer.
Okay. And you be good now and stay out of trouble.
I sure will.
Yeah.